At Aintree, it's all down to horsepower. For centuries, the thundering of hooves has echoed through the fields of Liverpool. As far back as Tudor times, the locals gathered for a flutter and a roar, but it was in 1829 that the Aintree racecourse first officially opened its gates to the public. And what a gate it opened. Home to the Grand National, the most grueling steeplechase in the world, where man and beast would tackle fences with names like Besher's Brook and the Chair. But times change, and so does horsepower. Fast forward to the roaring 50s, and the same patch of green English turf was suddenly filled with a very different breed of racer. No more saddles, just stitched leather bucket seats, a growl of engines, and drivers who'd rather fly than gallop. In 1955, Aintree welcomed its first Formula One Grand Prix. Today, the great Aintree circuit blends the elegance of old racing tradition with the brutal pace of modern motorsport. A flat and fast track built partly around the horse racing route, it's as British as tea and as unpredictable as the weather. And in 1957, it's more than just a home Grand Prix. It's a proving ground for British engineering, British bravery, and British belief that perhaps, just perhaps, this year is finally the year. This race is the fifth round of the 1957 Formula One World Championship. We are exactly halfway through the season. The title race is heating up, the teams are sharper than ever, and every corner of Aintree could make or break a contender's dream of lifting that coveted crown. And here's one for you. How many horsepower does a real horse actually have? You might think, well, obviously one. It's in the name. But nope, a healthy horse can actually produce anywhere from 8 to 15 horsepower in short bursts. That's right. It turns out one horse is actually several horses? Makes you wonder what unit of measurement James Watt was up to. Let us know in the comments if you got it right, or if you've got a better unit idea than horsepower. So settle in, dear viewers, for the gallop has become a Grand Prix, and the road ahead is fast, furious, and fantastically British. But before the engines roar at Aintree and the Union Jacks flutter for the 1957 British Grand Prix, we must first take a moment to look back, just 6 days ago, to a race that should have been a celebration of speed and spirit, but ended up as a haunting reminder of the sport's darker side. The 1957 Rams Grand Prix, a non-championship Formula One event, was held at the historic Ramsgau circuit in the heart of the Champagne region. On the surface, it was a triumphant day for Luigi Musso, who stormed to victory in a display of pure Italian flair and bravery, a much-needed success for Ferrari in a turbulent season. But the shadow of tragedy loomed large. On that same weekend, the joy of racing was shattered during the first Coupe de Vitesse, a Formula 2 support race, when not one, but two drivers, Bill Whitehouse and Herbert Mackay Fraser, lost their lives in separate, devastating accidents. Whitehouse, a 48-year-old British privateer and family man, was a familiar face to British racing fans. Humble, determined, and always ready to race, no matter the odds. Mackay Fraser, just 35, was a rising star of American racing, known for his fearlessness and ambition. His career had barely begun to blossom. Both men died doing what they loved, but their passing is a stark reminder of just how unforgiving motorsport once was, where courage was the only safety device, and speed often came at the highest cost. As we prepare to revisit the thrill of the 1957 British Grand Prix, we do so with full respect and reverence for those who paved the way, and for those who paid the ultimate price. After a dominant display across the opening rounds of the season, the Maserati squad touched down on British soil in buoyant spirits. 3 races, 3 victories, and with the championship tied very much in their favour, the men from Modena were keen to press their advantage further. Leading the charge, of course, was none other than Juan Manuel Fangio, the quiet storm from Balcarce, Argentina. The maestro had already notched up 3 consecutive wins this season, and here at Aintree, all eyes were on him to make it 4, and in doing so, edge ever closer to an unprecedented 5th World Championship crown. Backing Fangio, the familiar trio, John, the determined Frenchman with a fiery spirit, Harry Schell, the cool-headed American, and Carlos Menditegui, the unpredictable Argentine with a flair for the dramatic and occasionally the erratic. But while the driver lineup remained unchanged from Rouen, Maserati had made one key decision behind the scenes. Their powerful but temperamental 12-cylinder experiment had been quietly wheeled back into the shadows of the Modena workshop. In its place, the team entrusted their fate entirely to the proven and nimble 6-cylinder 250F, a machine lighter, more agile, and crucially, more reliable. Scuderia Ferrari arrived in the paddock at Aintree with a bit more spring in their step than in previous outings. After all, a double podium in France had finally lifted the red cars onto the scoreboard, a much-needed reminder that Maranello's machinery was still very much in the hunt. Enzo Ferrari was fielding a particularly formidable quartet. At the heart of the operation, two homegrown heroes, Peter Collins and Mike Hawthorne, ready to trade pleasantries for horsepower in front of the roaring British crowd. Both drivers knew the Aintree circuit like the back of their driving gloves and were eager to give the locals something to cheer about. Joining them, the cool-headed Italian Luigi Musso, who, let us not forget, is currently third in the championship standings, and the ever-smooth Frenchman Maurice Trintignant, rounding off a team that had talent in abundance, if not quite yet the silverware to show for it. But make no mistake, while Ferrari may have tasted champagne in France, they arrived in Britain still chasing that elusive first win of the season. And on British soil, with the likes of Fangio and the surging Vanwalls on their heels, or rather just ahead, that challenge would be anything but straightforward. And speaking of British pride, you can't miss the green machines of Vanwall, nor the man behind them, Tony van der Velde. The industrialist-turned-racing impresario arrived at Aintree with the quiet confidence of a man who'd finally seen the pieces begin to fall into place. For the first time this season, Vanwall would field not one, not two, but 3 cars. Why the sudden expansion? Well, for starters, both Stirling Moss and Tony Brooks, Vanwall's leading men, were back in action after sitting out the French Grand Prix with various ailments. No more sore backs or stubborn fevers. Both drivers had been patched up, polished off, and were raring to go. And as for the third seat, that remained in the capable hands of Stuart Lewis-Evans, whose spirited drive at Rouen had not gone unnoticed. Van der Velde, impressed by the youngster's cool head and quick hands, decided he'd earned a second chance, or perhaps even more. There was no hiding it. Expectations were high. 3 healthy drivers, 3 fast cars, and a home Grand Prix. If Vanwall was ever going to make a statement this season, one louder than the snarl of their fuel injection engines, Aintree was the place to do it. For the BRM team, the lead up to their home Grand Prix was marked not by anticipation, but by mourning. Herbert Mackay Fraser, the young American who had impressed so many in his debut at Rouen, was lost in a fatal accident during a Formula 2 race at Reims. A rising talent, gone before the world could truly see his potential. It was a crushing blow to the Bourne outfit, a team already no stranger to setbacks. Yet despite the grief, BRM chose not to step away. Team principal Alfred Owen, resolute in his vision, pressed on, not out of stubbornness, but out of duty. A home Grand Prix demanded their presence. So the team arrived at Aintree with 2 of their P25 machines, the flames still flickering, if not yet roaring. Behind the wheel were 2 British drivers, Les Leston, making a long-awaited appearance, and Jack Fairman, the ever-dependable tester with nerves of iron. No lofty ambitions, no grand expectations. Just 2 cars, 2 drivers, and a team trying to stay the course through difficult waters. And then, there's Cooper. Still the mischievous underdog of the paddock, the Surbiton squad once again rolled up to Aintree with their rear-engined oddities, tiny, nimble, and still very much not to be underestimated. While the big factory teams focused on raw power and high drama, Cooper's approach was more cheeky. Lightweight cars, clever design, and just enough horsepower to make the big names sweat. Leading the charge was Jack Brabham, the tough-as-nails Australian who had developed a habit of wrestling his Cooper further up the order than anyone expected. And alongside him, making up a formidable two-man effort, was Roy Salvadori, fast, fearless, and very much at home on British tarmac.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon from Aintree Circuit, where we stand on the edge of motoring history. The scene before us is simply picture perfect. The skies are a gentle blue. The sun casts a golden sheen on the tarmac. And for once, even the English weather has decided to behave. It's oddly pleasant, dare we say, even Mediterranean, here in Merseyside. Not a rain cloud in sight.
And now, dear viewers, buckle yourselves in, because we're hopping on board with Peter Collins for a blistering hot lap around the Aintree circuit. The Ferrari thunders across the start-finish line, and already it sends shivers through the grandstands. First up, Waterway Corner, a fast, sweeping right-hander that invites confidence, then punishes arrogance. Any faster, and you're history. He's flat on the throttle now, heavy on the brakes, the front end bites. Blasting down to Anchor Bend, the Ferrari wriggles as Collins commands it through with inch-perfect control. Then it's into Cottage Corner, the slowest bit on the track, slower than a tea break at the Queen's Garden Party. Collins muscles the car around it, the engine begging to be let off the leash. Heavy on the brakes, through Country Corner, the track opens up again. The Ferrari roars, breathing properly now. Every shift is crisp, every rev a declaration of war. Onto Village Corner, where Collins begins to wind the car up for the speed run to come. He exits cleanly, perfect setup for the long right-hand sweep of Canal Curve. Here, the car holds on for dear life, balancing speed and grip. Collins keeps it planted, a blur of red carving through asphalt, and emerges with speed in his veins. And now, the Stefton Straight. It's not straight for long, but it's long enough to let the Ferrari scream. Gear after gear, speed builds. It's a glorious, straightish run, perfect for terrifying birds and small children. But danger lies ahead, Melling Crossing, a fast, tricky chicane that unsettles the car. And finally, Tats Corner, a tight, demanding right-hander that links this whole wild ride back to the start-finish line. Collins brakes late, throws the Ferrari in, and bolts for the line once more. Lap complete, and what a lap it was. A masterclass in courage, control, and raw speed. That's what it takes to conquer Aintree. Qualifying at Aintree stretched over 2 nail-biting days, a battle not just of raw speed, but of national pride. In the end, it was the local hero who emerged on top. Stirling Moss, back in fine form after his absence in France, gave Vanwall their first ever pole position. A milestone for British motor racing, and one that sent a cheer rolling across the grandstands. But Vanwall weren't done yet. Just 2/10 adrift was the quiet and composed Tony Brooks, claiming third place and reinforcing the team's newfound might. Sandwiched between the 2 British Green Bullets was Juan, the surprise star of Maserati this weekend, who matched Brooks' time to snatch a spot on the front row. It wasn't Fangio flying the Maserati flag this time, but Berra, quick and relentless. And what of the great Fangio himself? The world champion looked uncharacteristically off balance at Aintree, finding only the second row and 4th place, a full 4/10 behind Moss. Not a disaster by any means, but not the kind of form we've come to expect from the maestro. Behind them, Ferrari's weekend continued in shades of red, but not the victorious kind. Mike Hawthorne salvaged 5th place, but the rest of the Scuderia trailed behind. Musso, Collins, and Trintignant scattered down in 8th, 9th, and 10th. Even Harry Schell managed to slip a Maserati between them, underlining just how much work the Italians had ahead. As for BRM and Cooper, well, their hopes for home glory would have to wait. BRM's P25s were hobbled by brake issues, while the Coopers, brave and clever as always, simply lacked the horsepower to play with the big boys over a long lap like Aintree. So the grid is set, a pole for Britain, a Frenchman in the fight, and a world champion quietly smouldering on row 2. All the ingredients for a classic.
All eyes now turn to the grid, where the finest machines of Europe are lined up, engines murmuring, drivers motionless with concentration. The 1957 British Grand Prix is just moments from commencing, a true test of endurance, courage, and mechanical might. Ahead lies a punishing 90 laps of the Aintree circuit, a total of 434 kilometers, or precisely 270 miles. These drivers will circle the course again and again, pushing themselves and their machines to the very edge for a chance of glory in the British round of the 1957 World Championship. Hold on your hats, your programs, and your corned beef rolls. The engines scream the full song, and they're off.
The flag drops, and just like in France, it's Jean Behra who reacts like lightning. The Frenchman catapults his Maserati off the line and charges into the first corner as the early leader. But hold on to your Trilby hats, because the British crowd doesn't have to wait long. Stirling Moss isn't here to play second fiddle on home soil. Before the end of the very first lap, Moss dives ahead of Behra with a daring move. A home driver in the lead, a Vanwall at the front. Could this be the start of something historic? Juan Manuel Fangio, usually a slow starter by nature, delivers what might be the worst getaway of his entire glittering career. His Maserati seems to bog down just enough to invite the wolves, and they come swarming. By the time the field roars through the opening corners, Fangio has been swallowed up by the pack, falling all the way back to 8th place. Sure, we've seen the maestro fumble the opening meters before. It's almost part of the show by now. But this is uncharted territory. Even Fangio himself must be blinking in disbelief.
Juan Manuel Fangio, the maestro himself, slipping into his scarlet Maserati 250F, more precisely the latest T2 variant. It's got a glorious 2.5-liter V6 engine that screams up to 9.3 thousand RPM and turns out a tidy 310 horsepower.
Maybe it's the roar of the British crowd. Maybe it's the thought of someone else stealing the headlines on home soil. Whatever it is, Hawthorne's foot goes heavier, and the Ferrari finds its stride. Closing in on Tony Brooks, Hawthorne picks his moment with the precision of a surgeon. A smooth, elegant overtake, and a clear reminder that Ferrari's not here just to fill the grid. Carlos Menditegui and Harry Schell, teammates on paper. The two go wheel to wheel in a flurry of sound and smoke, jostling for position like it's the last lap, not the third. But as they power through the next sequence, Menditegui holds his nerve, muscles past his teammate, and claims 8th place with a bold move that surely raised a few eyebrows on the Maserati pit wall. Stuart Lewis-Evans is making a name for himself. In just a single lap, the young British driver demonstrates composure, precision, and remarkable speed. He begins by overtaking Harry Schell, finding the gap and making it stick with confidence. A few corners later, Carlos Menditegui falls next. Despite the Argentine's aggressive defense, Lewis-Evans holds his line and moves ahead cleanly. But what follows is the most striking moment so far. The green Vanwall closes in on Juan Manuel Fangio, a calculated move under braking, and Lewis-Evans passes the reigning world champion. No mistakes, no hesitation. It is an extraordinary charge. 3 drivers passed in a single lap, including Fangio himself. Meanwhile, at the front of the pack, Stirling Moss is in complete control. With the crowd firmly behind him and the Vanwall running flawlessly beneath him, Moss begins to stretch his advantage. Moss, calm in the cockpit, looks as though he's not just racing. He's enjoying every moment of it. While Moss carves out his lead at the front, His teammate Tony Brooks begins to slip in the opposite direction. First, it's Peter Collins who edges past, his Ferrari looking increasingly comfortable as the laps unfold. Not long after, Luigi Musso follows suit, making a clean move that leaves the Vanwall trailing behind both Scarlet machines. In just a few corners, Brooks finds himself pushed out of the points-paying positions. By lap 15, Stuart Lewis-Evans continues to make waves in his Grand Prix debut season. Still riding the momentum of his earlier surge, the young Briton now sets his sights on teammate Tony Brooks and wastes no time. With a composed and confident move, Lewis-Evans slips past Brooks. It's another statement of intent from the rising star, who is rapidly climbing the order and proving he belongs among the sport's elite. On lap 23, the crowd's cheers fade into anxious silence as Stirling Moss suddenly veers into the pits. Something clearly isn't right. The Vanwall team leaps into action as Moss reports a suspected magneto fault. In those precious seconds, a train of contenders storms past the pit lane. John Behra, ever consistent and fast in his Maserati, inherits the lead. But on the very next lap, it becomes clear the issue hasn't been solved. The misfire persists. Moss is still losing power. With frustration mounting, he pulls into the pits once again. Team owner Tony van der Velde steps forward. "You'll be back out," he tells him. "We'll get you another car." On the next lap, the Vanwall pit signals Tony Brooks to come in. Without delay, the young Brit pulls into the pits, not for repairs, but for something far more strategic. In a swift and rehearsed maneuver, Brooks steps out, handing over the cockpit to Stirling Moss. He rejoins in 7th place, the crowd rising once again, sensing that the story is far from over. Now armed with a healthy car and still plenty of laps ahead, Moss sets off with a clear goal, to claw his way back to the front. And before we forget, up in 6th place, quietly running but far from his usual brilliance, is Juan Manuel Fangio. His car is healthy, no mechanical gremlins, no pit stops, just the cold reality of being outpaced. For a man with 4 world titles and 3 wins already this season, this is a surprising, even lackluster showing. Whether it's the circuit, the conditions, or something else entirely, the maestro of Maserati has yet to find his rhythm here at Aintree. And with the laps ticking by, the question starts to form. Has the champion simply had an off day, or is there more to this story still to come? On lap 31, Stirling Moss finds his rhythm. Now fully settled behind the wheel of Tony Brooks' Vanwall, the British ace begins to unleash his full pace. He extracts every ounce of performance from the car, lap after lap. This time, he crosses the line in 1 minute, 59.2 seconds, the fastest lap of the race so far. On lap 35, Stirling Moss reels in the world champion. With the Vanwall now running faultlessly, Moss closes the gap to Fangio with relentless pace. For a few corners, the two giants of motor racing run wheel to wheel, the crowd holding its breath. But it doesn't last long. Moss edges ahead, diving past the Maserati in a daring move that sends the Aintree stands into rapturous applause. The home hero has just passed the reigning king, and the British fans are on their feet. On lap 36, it's all over for Carlos Menditigai. His Maserati begins to lose drive, and within moments it's clear the transmission is gone. Every gear fails to respond, leaving the Argentine stranded with nothing more to do than coast into retirement. His valiant run comes to an end, and with it, he surrenders 8th place. A tough blow for Maserati, and a bitter end to Menditigai's efforts at Aintree. Stirling Moss is unrelenting. Lap after lap, the Vanwall responds to his every command, and by lap 40, the charge is far from over. Up ahead, Luigi Musso in the Ferrari is doing what he can to hold on to 5th place, but the Italian can sense it. It's only a matter of time. Moss lines up his move and pulls it off with trademark precision. Clean, confident, and absolute. Musso can offer no reply. Stirling sweeps into 5th place, reclaiming a spot in the points. The crowd knows what they're witnessing now is more than just damage control. It's the making of a drive to remember.
Now keep your eyes on the green and gold Vanwall VW5, a magnificent machine straight out of British engineering brilliance. That's Stirling Moss at the wheel. The VW5 is powered by a 2.5-litre straight-4 engine built under the watchful eye of Tony Manuel. With fuel injection and advanced aerodynamics, the Vanwall is no joke. It's the pride of the Isle.
Jean Behra, still leading at the front, is driving like a man possessed. After years of trying, of fierce efforts and near misses, Behra now finds himself with a genuine shot at Grand Prix glory. The Maserati runs smoothly beneath him, and with the laps ticking by, the dream begins to look like a reality. If he can hold this pace, if fate chooses not to interfere, Aintree may just be the place where Jean Behra writes his name into Formula One history. Lap after lap, Stirling Moss continues his spectacular comeback. And now, with Peter Collins in his sights, the young Briton knows he has a chance to take another step towards the front. Collins, struggling with an overheating engine, offers little resistance as Moss surges past him effortlessly on lap 47, taking 4th place. As the race unfolds, it's becoming increasingly clear. Stirling Moss is on a mission, and nothing is going to stand in his way. By lap 50, the reason for Juan Manuel Fangio's sluggish pace becomes clear. A faulty valve mechanism in his Maserati has rendered the engine underpowered, leaving the world champion struggling to maintain any competitive speed. It's a blow for Fangio, who had already endured a frustrating race. As his car limps around the track, it becomes apparent that there's no way to resolve the issue. Without hesitation, Fangio pulls into the pits, his race effectively over. Despite the mechanical failure, the maestro shows his usual class. He refuses to bring another Maserati back onto the track. Even in the face of adversity, Fangio's resolve is unshaken, and he calmly steps away from the wheel, his focus shifting to the bigger picture of the season. On lap 54, Peter Collins is left with almost no coolant in his Ferrari, and it's clear that his race is over. He pulls into the pits, and with that, his hopes of securing a strong finish vanish. But this opens the door for his teammate Luigi Musso, who moves up to 5th place. On lap 70, Jean Behra's dream of securing his first Grand Prix victory shatters in an instant. As he powers through the track, disaster strikes. His transmission fails, and with it, his hopes of making history at Aintree. The gears refuse to cooperate, and the Frenchman has no choice but to pull over to the side of the track, his heart sinking as the realization hits. Behra, who had been leading for so much of the race, now watches helplessly as his car comes to a stop. He can barely believe how close he came to claiming that elusive first win. It's a crushing blow for the driver, who had battled so hard and shown such promise. But the real surprise comes a lap later. Stirling Moss, having already shown incredible resolve in his comeback, catches up to the battling duo of Mike Hawthorne and Stuart Lewis-Evans. The tension in the air is palpable as these two drivers fight it out for position, unaware of the storm brewing behind them. Moss, with his relentless pace, closes in, and he picks the perfect moment to strike. In a move that seems almost choreographed, Moss makes his move in one fluid motion. The crowd erupts as Moss regains the lead, making it look effortless despite the pressure he has been under all race long. The roar from the stands is so deafening, it feels like Moss must be able to hear them louder than the sound of his own engine. And dear viewers, as we reach the final lap of this extraordinary contest, it is Stirling Moss who emerges from the storm of competition to take the checkered flag first. The Aintree crowd erupts, an overwhelming, thunderous ovation of national pride and unfiltered joy. Luigi Musso brings his Ferrari home in second, his consistency and good fortune sparing him from the mechanical woes that plagued his teammates. With this strong finish, Musso collects 6 vital points and now stands as Juan Manuel Fangio's main challenger in the fight for the championship. Third place goes to Mike Hawthorne. Blisteringly quick, the Englishman was very much in the fight for victory until a slow puncture forced him into the pits. He still delivers a valuable result on home ground. Fourth is Maurice Trintignant, who didn't dazzle with outright pace today, but managed his race with method and calm, rewarded once again with points. And fifth, in a breakthrough moment, is Roy Salvadori. The Briton not only scores his own first points in Formula One, but also hands Cooper their very first points in the World Championship. Leading the title race is the reigning world champion, Juan Manuel Fangio, with 25 points. Despite a difficult British Grand Prix, the Argentine maestro remains firmly at the top, a testament to his earlier victories and consistent presence at the front. But the challenge is growing. Climbing to second place in the standings is Luigi Musso, now with 13 points. The Italian's measured drive at Aintree has brought him within striking distance. With momentum and reliability on his side, Musso is now the primary contender looking to dethrone Fangio. In third, we find Tony Brooks on 10 points, whose performance at Aintree, even as a car donor, has earned him his first World Championship victory and a place among the front runners. With 3 races remaining, the championship battle is taking shape. The 1957 British Grand Prix at Aintree wasn't just another chapter in the season. It was a milestone, a moment when the Union Jack finally flew high in the world of Grand Prix racing. For the first time in Formula One history, a British constructor, powered by a British engine, didn't just compete, it conquered. Vanwall, a team that had been knocking on the door of greatness, finally burst through. Pole position, fastest lap, victory, a Grand Slam, all achieved on home soil. It was a triumphant moment not just for the team, but for the entire British motorsport community. Engineers, mechanics, fans and dreamers who had long watched Italian and German machines dominate the podiums. Vanwall had proven what many hoped but few dared to believe, that the British could build a car, design an engine, and field a team capable of beating the very best in the world. And they did it not with borrowed parts or foreign know-how, but with British talent. Next up, a race against logic, a duel with fear, a challenge so brutal even the bravest men whisper its name. The Nürburgring is back, not just a circuit, but the circuit, the alpha and omega of racing itself. It's every driver's nightmare, and yet they must face it. Join us next time as Formula One returns to the green hell for a race that promises to be another milestone in the sport's extraordinary journey.